50 Popular Aesop's Fables. English version. A snake, an eagle, and a hunter. One day near a stream, an eagle and a snake were fighting. The eagle was losing, and the snake began wrapping itself around the eagle to suffocate it to death. At that time, a hunter came across the two animals and saved the eagle's life by shooting his gun into the sky to distract the snake. Startled by the loud noise, the snake panicked and let go of its enemy. The eagle escaped and flew away. As the hunter's interference caused the snake's resentment, later the snake secretly poisoned the man's water cylinder. Later, the hunter became thirsty and was about to drink the poisonous water. When the eagle, who had witnessed the snake's trick, swooped down to fetch the container from the hunter and saved his life. The moral of the story: one who offers help to others will be rewarded with good things in return. An Instructive Man. One day, a little boy fell into a river and shouted, "Help! Help! Somebody help me! I can't swim." As the boy struggled in the water, a man passed by and heard the boy's calls for help. He rushed to the edge of the river and found the boy drowning. When he reached the river, however, instead of helping the boy, the man scolded him. "You are so naughty. If I didn't find you, you would have died for sure." When the boy heard the man, he replied, "Would you please get me out of the river first? If you keep scolding me, I will drown for certain." The moral of the story: find a solution to a problem before complaining about it. A baby ox and a young ox. One day, after a group of oxen finished eating grass in the forest and were on the way back to their stable, a young ox led the group to a narrow shortcut in order to get out of the forest faster. The baby ox wondered whether the shortcut would lead them home safely, so it sped up to lead the group instead. The baby ox spoke to all oxen. "I think this shortcut is not the right way home. All of you should follow me back to the old route instead." When the young ox heard that, it replied, "Baby ox, you'd better step aside. I know this shortcut very well, and I knew it before you were born." The moral of the story: do not try to outsmart people who have more experience and knowledge. A crab and a fox. At a beach, a crab got sick of living in a narrow reef by the sea and decided to move to a vast field alone. Its friends tried to stop it from moving and warned the crab of the dangers waiting in the However, the crab listened to none of their warnings. The crab moved to live in a vast field. It thought that the field was the best place for it. because it could walk around freely and did not have to hide in a reef anymore. However, the crab felt lonely living by itself. One day, while the crab was strolling, a starving fox passed by in its blind spot. The fox leaped at the crab immediately, intending to make the crab its meal. Before the crab died, it thought to itself, "I'm a fool leaving my home to live here alone, and now I must die alone as well." The moral of the story: there is no place better than home. A crane and a goose. A group of cranes and geese lived together in a same pond. The geese were always in the water and the cranes were always at the riverbank. One day, a goose talked to a crane. "We, the geese, are the best swimmers in the whole world. It makes it easy to catch fish, unlike you that have to dig for small fish at the riverbank." Instead of feeling angry by the goose's words, the crane stayed calm and did not respond. One day, a hunter came by the pond with a bird net. When the birds saw the hunter, they all panicked and flew away in a hurry. When the crane saw what happened, it spread its wings, flew away, and said, "Even though I'm not a good swimmer, I can fly away to the heavens." The geese had to run away and eventually were caught by the hunter's net. The moral of the story: do not be proud that you have a better ability than others. Everyone has different advantages and disadvantages. A crow and a dove. At a wealthy man's house, there was a pregnant dove that was going to lay eggs soon. The wealthy man took good care of the mother dove, keeping it in a beautiful gold cage and fed it well every single meal. One day, a crow flew by and landed on the edge of the window near the dove's cage. The dove greeted, "Hello, crow. I feel pity on you that you have to go out looking for food every day. Look at me. I live very comfortably, and my children will have this comfortable life as well." When the crow heard that, it replied, "I don't envy your boastful words at all. Even though you and your children will always be filled and have a comfortable home to sleep every night, you are imprisoned, living a life without a freedom forever." The moral of the story: those who are enslaved by material goods or comfort will never find true happiness. A crow and a pigeon. There was a crow that worked so hard preparing food, both for itself and friends, for the coming winter. One day, the crow flew by a white pigeon's nest that was packed with food. The crow wanted to eat that food. The crow then decided to sneak into the white pigeon's nest. The crow stole white paint from a villager and painted itself, head to tail, in white. Then, the crow snuck into the white pigeon's nest. No pigeons noticed that it was a crow. The crow stayed in that nest happily. One day, A pigeon greeted the crow, and when the crow replied, its voice revealed its true identity. Suddenly, the crow was exiled from the pigeon's nest. The crow was forced to move back to its old home. However, when its friends saw its body painted in white, different from other crows, they drove the crow out of its own home. The crow became homeless and lived by itself ever since. The moral of the story. A person who tells a lie for his own comfort will never be trusted or befriended. A Crow and God. A crow fell into a deep hole and injured its wings. The crow could no longer fly, so it shouted out for help. During that time, a god passed by and heard the crow shouting. The god helped pull the crow out of the hole. The crow promised that it would return the god's favor and told the god it would bring incense as a token of thanks. Many days later, the crow forgot its promise and did not give incense to the god. Many days later, the crow fell into the deep hole again. It prayed for the same god to rescue it again. Suddenly, the god appeared. The crow said, "Please help me again. I promise I will give you incense." When the god heard that, the god replied, "How do you expect me to believe your words, since the last time you forgot your promise?" When the god finished talking, he disappeared immediately. The crow was still stuck in the hole and eventually starved to death. The moral of the story. The one who breaks his promise is not worthy of trust from others.
A donkey with the image. One day, a sculptor put a newly made sacred image on his donkey's back to move it to the village's temple. Throughout the trip into town, villagers came out to faithfully worship the sacred image. When the donkey saw that, it thought the villagers were worshiping it for its beauty and nobility. The donkey lifted its chin high and walked with dignity. When the sculptor saw the donkey's behavior, he whipped in the sternly backside and said,
"Foolish donkey, don't you know that those villagers are worshipping the sacred image, not a stupid donkey like you?"
The moral of the story. A conceited man always overvalues himself and thinks that people respect him, but they are really only afraid of his authority.
A dove, a fox, and a pear tree. One day, a dove flew over a fruitful pear tree and noticed that animals had already picked and eaten its fruits until nothing was left on the tree. Next morning, the dove decided to station itself at the pear tree because he expected that the tree would surely bear fruit again soon. Every day, there was also a fox sleeping under the tree, who noticed that the dove always perched on the branch and never left. After a few days passed, having seen the dove waiting in the same position every day, The fox asked, "Why don't you fly out sometimes? I've been watching you, and you haven't moved for days." The dove answered, "Well, I've been waiting for the tree to be fruitful. When the time comes, I'll eat all the fruits alone." When the fox heard the dove's answer, he replied, "I suppose you're going to starve to death, as you never know when the tree will blossom again." The moral of the story: live in the present. Do not waste time waiting for the future. A farmer and the dogs. There was a farm on which a farmer raised sheep and goats for their milk. He also raised a cow to do manual labor and 2 dogs to guard the house. When winter arrived, snow fell for months on end, and the farmer could not go out to find food. After a while, his provisions ran out. When all the food was gone, he decided to kill his sheep to survive. The next day, he killed goats, and many days later, he killed the cow. The 2 dogs saw what was happening and got worried. One dog said to the other one, "Even the sheep and the goat that were raised for milk got killed, and the cow was killed too. He will make us his next meal for sure." When they finished talking, the 2 dogs ran away from the farm. They decided to face the freezing snowstorm in hopes of survival, rather than waiting for their deaths to come. The moral of the story: when bad things happen to those close to you, find a way to keep yourself away from the danger. A fight of wild fowls. In a quiet forest, there were 2 wild fowls fighting for dominance. They agreed that the winner would be the group leader, and the loser would be exiled from the forest. The day of the fight arrived. Both birds fought each other viciously until a winner and a loser emerged. The winner was very happy and proud that it was strong and brave enough to beat the other wild fowl. It tried to climb on a small hill and shouted aloud to show that it was now the leader of a wild fowl. Suddenly, the eagle flew by and noticed the wild fowl. The eagle fluttered quickly and caught the fowl as its meat. The moral of the story: boasting always leads to doom.
A Fox and a Crow. One day, a wicked fox was strolling in a forest when it accidentally noticed a crow flying by with a large piece of meat in its mouth.
"Hello, Crow,"
said the fox.
"I think your eyes are beautiful, like the eyes of a hawk."
Flattered by the fox, the crow slowly hovered to the branch of a nearby tree. The fox continued speaking.
"When I see you closely now, your wings look as strong as if they were the wings of an eagle."
The crow was quite pleased. The fox continued saying,
"I really want to hear your voice. I can only imagine how melodious it must be."
The crow opened its mouth to sing, and the chunk of meat fell into the ground. The fox rushed in and took the meat before he disappeared in a flash. The moral of the story. Flattery usually comes from those with hidden agendas.
A Fox and a Donkey. Once upon a time, there was a fox and a donkey who were close friends. One day, the fox got lost and wandered into a lion's cave. The fox knew that the lion would eat it for sure, so it begged the lion, "Please don't eat me. If you let me go, I will bring a fat donkey to serve you as your meal." When the lion heard the fox's proposition, it let the fox go, and later, the fox brought the donkey back to the lion's cave as promised. When both the fox and the donkey arrived, the lion spoke to them both. "Foolish donkey, your friend has kept its promise well, but unfortunately for you, the promise was to seduce you here to be my meal." When it finished speaking, the lion leapt at them, mauling both the donkey and the fox by the throat. Moral of the story. A bad friend will lead one to doom. A Fox and Horseflies. A fox had just escaped from a hunter's chase. Its wounds were bleeding, and it felt too tired to keep running away. The fox decided to rest under a big tree. A while later, horseflies that had a hive nearby smelled the fox's blood. They flew around and sucked the blood from the fox, which caused it a lot of pain. Ow! During that time, there was a porcupine passing by. It felt sorry for the fox, so it said, "You must be in a lot of pain. Do you want me to chase these horseflies away?" When the fox heard that, it replied, "Thank you very much for your kindness, but I prefer to let these full horseflies swarm around me until I'm cured. If you chase these full horseflies away, a new group of them would hungrily suck my blood again, which would be even more painful." The moral of the story. A man with consciousness knows how to deal with hardship. A goat herder. Early one morning, a goat herder led his goats to the bottom of a mountain and to graze as usual. As soon as they reached the foot of the mountain, it began to rain hard. So he led the goats into the shelter of a nearby cave. When he got in the cave, the goat herder saw 4 or 5 wild goats hiding in the cave as well. The goat herder got greedy and decided that he would bring these wild goats home with him as well. In order to win over the wild goats, the goat herder fed the wild goats with all the food he had prepared. There was no sign that the rain would stop, and the goat herder soon fell asleep. A moment later, the rain stopped, and the wild goats left the cave. In the evening, when the goat herder woke up, he saw that his goats, who had not been fed at all, were weakened and starting to die. He then decided to go looking for the wild goats in order to bring them home instead of his own goats. However, he could not even find them. Eventually, he went home empty-handed. He had lost all of his own goats and never got the wild goats as well. The moral of the story: greediness leads to disappointment and loss. a hawk and a peasant. A hawk, flying in the sky, looked down at a chick, pecking seeds on the ground, swooped down to collect the chick for food. As soon as he was going to catch the chick, a peasant, who had been hiding, threw a net over the hawk. The hawk tried to escape helplessly as the net tightened around its body. Finally, it begged for his life, saying to the peasant, "I never hurt or meant any harm to you. Please spare my life." The peasant answered, "The chick you ate never meant you any harm either. Still, you catch them for food every day. I won't let you do this again." The moral of the story: one who means harm on others will one day be harmed themselves. A horse and a horseman. A horseman was hired to take care of a horse in a wealthy man's house. At first, he took good care of it, brushing and rubbing the horse every day. He also fed it with the best grains every meal. The horse was in good health and had beautiful fur. Later, the horseman started to be deceitful. He secretly sold the horse's quality grains and kept the money. Meanwhile, the horse was thin, because it did not get the same grains as it used to. Time passed, and the wealthy man noticed that his horse was getting thinner and thinner. The horse no longer had a grand and superior appearance. The wealthy man complained to the horseman about this. However, the horseman did not obey the wealthy man's words and kept selling the horse's grain. One day, the horse spoke to the horseman. "If you still want this comfortable job with a convenient place to live, you should give me more grain, or I will reveal your malignance and fraud." The moral of the story: honesty is the best policy. A kitten and a fox. One day, a kitten was chatting with a fox under a tree. The fox boasted with pride, "In this forest, I am not scared of anything, even the lion, because I have a lot of survival skills." The kitten, being a little naive, said to the fox, "You are very smart. Whoa! Unlike me, all I can do is escape to the highest place when danger comes." As the fox continued explaining its theories about ways to escape, a pack of hounds laid hiding in a bush waiting to attack. Then the pack of hounds attacked from the hidden bush. Kitten hurried up to the treetop as the fox was considering a way out. The kitten escaped from the sharp claws of hounds. On the other hand, the know-it-all fox became their food. The moral of the story: having a lot of knowledge is useless when it cannot be used. A lion and a Bengal tiger. One day, during a drought, a lion and a Bengal tiger were having a fight in front of a pond. They both needed the small amount of water that was left in the pond. The lion said, "I found this pond first, therefore the water is mine." The Bengal tiger disagreed. "In fact, it was I who found this pond first, therefore the water is mine." As the argument continued, the lion and the Bengal tiger started fighting harder and harder under the hot sun. They fought until they became worn out. Suddenly, a flock of vultures began to fly in circle above the pond. It was then that the lion said to the Bengal tiger, "I think we should share the water. I don't want to fight with you until one of us dies and becomes a meal for those hungry vultures." The moral of the story: a compromise is always the best solution. A man and bamboos. One day, the son of an orchardist was strolling through the orchard as usual. When he noticed the bamboos growing around the orchard and thought, "These bamboos provide no benefit. They bear neither flowers nor fruits. Why do we have to plant them?" With this thought in mind, he ordered his workers to cut down all the bamboo. Many days later, when all the bamboo around the orchard was gone, the animals in the surrounding forest noticed the fruits in the orchard and ate most of it, leaving the orchard severely damaged. When his son saw what happened, he thought, "I shouldn't cut down the bamboos. It was the fence of my home." The moral of the story: everything is useful in its own way. A monkey and a fisherman. One morning, a fisherman laid down his net in a river. He spent all morning setting up the net, and when it was noon, the fisherman went back to his hut for lunch. A monkey who was observing the fisherman thought that it too could set a net and catch some fish to eat himself. So it took another net that the fisherman had left by the river. However, the monkey had no idea how to use the net. It flipped the net back and forth until the net was coiled. The monkey fell into the river. Caught in the coiled net, the harder it tried to get free from the net, the more the net tightened around it. Finally, the monkey could not breathe and drowned. The moral of the story: an ignorant man brings about his own doom.
A monkey and a tortoise. A long time ago, there was a monkey living near a stream. He picked up fruits there every day until nothing was left, but the trees on the opposite side of the stream still had a lot of ripe fruits.
Wow!
One day, a tortoise swam by, and the monkey came to greet him.
Hi, Tortoise. I've never seen such a skillful swimmer as you in all my life. I don't even know how to swim at all. I really envy you.
The tortoise was very proud of himself then. He invited his new friend.
Get on my back. I'll take you to the opposite side.
The monkey did not hesitate and jumped on the back of the tortoise. Slowly, the tortoise swam to the other side of the stream. When they arrived, the monkey got off the tortoise's back and said,
You are so slow. You are not useful to me anymore. I don't have to compliment you anymore, slow tortoise.
The moral of the story. Do not fall for the flattery of a person who wants to take advantage of you.
A nobleman and a tanner. A tanner who lived with a nobleman in his castle brought all his leathers for tanning, which caused a dreadful smell throughout the place. The nobleman could not take the foul odor, so he said to the tanner, "I think you're going to have to move out, as we can no longer tolerate the smell." The tanner refused and asked to postpone his departure, giving the reason. "I have to finish my work. Leathers being tanned today will be made into fine clothes for the queen in the future day." When the nobleman heard the answer, he decided to allow the tanner to stay in order to complete his work. Months later, the tanner finished his work and was going to move out as promised. However, to his surprise, the nobleman said, "You can stay here if you want to. We are getting used to your tanning smell already." The moral of the story. Time will help one get used to a new environment. A partridge and fighting cocks. In the countryside, there was a man who raised fighting cocks. He always brought his fighting cocks to the fight every day. One day, while he was walking into a forest, he found a lovely partridge. He wanted to keep the partridge as a pet, so he decided to bring the partridge home with him. He put the partridge in the cage with the fighting cocks. Immediately after, the partridge was attacked by the fighting cocks, who crowded and hurt it. The partridge could not leave the farm, so it felt neglected and thought of committing suicide. During that time, the fighting cocks fought each other on the farm as usual. When the partridge saw that, it thought to itself, "I should not feel bad that they hurt me. Even though they are friends, they hurt each other." Since then, the partridge never thought about committing suicide again. The moral of the story. Understanding a problem helps enlighten us and lead us through hard times. A racehorse in a rice mill. A famous racehorse with a multitude of trophies was very proud of his excellence and ability. However, he was getting older and older as time passed. He could not race anymore, so the owner sold him to a rice mill. The rice mill owner worked him hard and told him to pull the rice binder every day. The horse was sorry at his fate and thought, "Nothing is permanent in this world. Once I was the most famous animal in this prestigious field, but now I have to work the rice binder." The moral of the story. Fame is temporary. A sheep and a shepherd dog. Early in the morning, while a shepherd and his shepherd dog were taking a herd of sheep out to feed as usual, one of the sheep spoke to the man. "You shear our wool to make clothing and bring our milk to drink and cook. But what do we receive in return? Our only bad-tasting grass and water. It's not fair at all." As soon as he finished speaking, the sheep turned to the shepherd dog and said, "I don't see why you still treat your dog so well with meat, milk, and your food when he can't do anything useful." When the sheep had finished, the shepherd answered, "Without having this sheepdog's protection from wolves and foxes, you would never have a chance to eat plenty of food like this. His duty is harder than yours." The moral of the story: a wild person never learns gratitude. A shepherd and a baby tiger. One day, while a shepherd was leading his sheep home, a baby tiger followed behind the line. The shepherd decided to keep the baby tiger and raised it with his sheep. He had a devious idea that when the baby tiger grew up, he would use it to steal his neighbor's sheep. When the baby tiger grew up, the shepherd ordered it to go steal the neighbor's sheep as planned. When the tiger succeeded, the shepherd gave the tiger some stolen mutton as its reward. When the neighbors noticed that their sheep were disappearing one by one, they started building stalls and brought shepherd dogs to guard their sheep. The tiger could not steal sheep anymore, and it did not get any more rewards. The tiger was really stubborn. Finally, when the tiger gave into its hunger, it started eating the shepherd sheep one by one. The shepherd could not do anything but watch as the baby tiger that he raised ate all of his sheep. The moral of the story: what goes around comes around. A sparrow and a hare. One day, as eagles searched for their food, one of them saw a hare and dove to catch it. A sparrow who was nearby laughed at the hare and spoke up. "I never thought that such a fast runner like you would die such a pathetic death." As soon as the sparrow finished speaking, the other eagle swooped down to catch him. The tiny sparrow was in the same position as the hare, in the sharp claws of the eagle. The hare said, "What you have just said has happened to you now." The moral of the story: do not make fun of the misfortunes of others, as you might end up the same way. A Tailless Fox. One day, a fox fell into a hunter's trap and got its tail stuck. During the struggle to get free, the fox lost its tail in the trap. Oh no! The fox was worried about its stub and thought to itself, "I will make my friends think that living without a tail is the best thing ever." The tailless fox started talking with its friends about how fantastic it was to live without a tail. The fox claimed, Since I have no tail, I'm unique, and I run much faster without the tail weighing me down. All of the fox's friends believed its deceitful words, until an old fox who nearby spoke up. Our beautiful tails are valuable, and we should be proud of them. I don't see what is so good about being a tailless fox. Don't try to fool us. The moral of the story: a wise man will not fall for deceitful words. A traveler and a swarm of bees. One day, while walking in a jungle, a traveler got a glimpse of a beehive on a tree. And decided to take a closer look. Out of curiosity, the traveler used a stick to poke the hive. The bees, who thought that the traveler was trying to steal their honey, swarmed and attacked him fiercely until he was severely injured. He shouted, "I don't mean to steal your honey or hurt you. Please stop stinging me." However, the bees did not listen to him and replied, "How can we believe your words?" Then they kept chasing and stinging the traveler until he ran out of the jungle. The moral of the story: curiosity can bring about disaster. A vain leopard. There was a leopard living in a forest. It was pleased and fascinated by the marks on its body. It thought that it was the most beautiful and valiant creature in the forest. One day, the leopard walked up to an old fox that was lying down under the foot of the big tree. The leopard said, "Why is your fur so ugly? Look at the fur and marks on my body. They are way more beautiful than yours." When the old fox heard that, it replied, "If you are as brave and doughty as your boastful words, why don't you fight with the lion to take the authority of this forest from him? I want to know if your beautiful marks will help you beat the lion." The moral of the story: the value of a person is defined by his actions, not appearance. A wolf and a baby sheep. At the foot of a big tree in a large forest, a wolf lay injured from the chase of a hunter resting in the shade, curing its wounds. The wolf could not go out to find food. Suddenly, a baby sheep passed by. The wolf greeted the baby sheep with a sad voice. "Hello, baby sheep. I'm injured and cannot walk. I'm so thirsty. Would you please go find water for me?" The baby sheep replied, "Do you need food as well?" The wolf replied with a wicked voice, "I only need water. The food I already have." When the baby sheep heard the wolf, it laughed and replied, "Ha ha ha. I know why you don't need food. As soon as I get you water, you will make me your food." When the sheep finished speaking, it slowly walked away until it disappeared from sight. The moral of the story: a wise man knows what an evil man is up to. A wolf and a sheep. One day, a pack of wolves sent their goodwill ambassador to make friends with a herd of sheep. The ambassador wolf said to the sheep, "Since the shepherd uses hounds to protect and control you, you are unable to play in the fields as you used to. Furthermore, they have created a misunderstanding between you and the wolves. They maligned us by saying that we always want to hurt the sheep, which is not true at all." When the sheep heard that, they agreed. The ambassador wolf continued, "If you help us drive off the hound, you will get your freedom back. And for our new relationship, we, the wolves, will guarantee your safety." The sheep believed the ambassador wolf and began to drive the hound away. When the hound was gone, the wolves began to eat the sheep one by one until there were no sheep left at all. The moral of the story: falling for deceitful words could lead to a wolf and a shepherd. In a vast field, a shepherd usually tended to his sheep while they grazed. In the woods near the field lived a wolf, who also watched the sheep every day. Even though the wolf showed no signs of hostility, the shepherd kept his eyes locked on the wolf all the time. Many months later, the wolf wandered close to the sheep without hurting them. The shepherd began to think that maybe it might be a good wolf. One day, the shepherd had to attend some business in the city, so he entrusted the wolf to look after his sheep. The wolf agreed immediately and said, "I promise I will do my best to look after your sheep. Please trust me." When the shepherd heard that, he left for the city to do his business joyfully. In the evening, the shepherd got back from the city. He found that all of his sheep were gone. When he walked to the field, he found nothing but a pile of bones. It was then that the shepherd realized his mistake and said, "I'm a fool when I trusted that evil wolf." The moral of the story: do not trust the words or actions of evil men. An angry donkey. A man was leading his donkey on a narrow and small path on a mountain. The donkey's back was loaded with trunks and the owner's personal things. With such a heavy load, the donkey felt like he could no longer take another step. A while later, the donkey became frustrated with the heavy load, so it pretended to be rebellious. The donkey jumped back and forth, but since the path was narrow, it slipped and almost fell off the mountain. Fortunately, the owner grabbed its bridle just in time. The donkey survived. After that, the owner spoke. "If you think you will get less weight on your back by pretending to be rebellious, you'd better find another way." The donkey felt embarrassed and got even more angry that the owner knew what was on its mind. The donkey pretended to be rebellious again, and again it slipped. Unfortunately, this time, the owner could not grab the bridle in time, and the donkey fell off the mountain to its death. The moral of the story: anger only brings unnecessary danger. an eagle, and a lion. One day, while an eagle was flying up in the sky, it noticed a lion was strolling on the ground. The eagle wanted to be friends with the lion, so he fluttered down and greeted the lion. "Hello, king of the forest. I think we should be friends. For something might happen someday in the future, we could help each other." The lion hesitated for a while and did not trust the eagle immediately. The lion replied, "I would have no problem being your friend if only you could answer my question." The eagle wondered and asked, "What is your question, king of the forest? You can ask me now." The lion asked, "How could I trust someone who could fly away from me at any moment?" The moral of the story: starting a relationship with someone must come after careful consideration. An olive tree and a fig tree. In a forest, there was an olive tree and a fig tree standing close together. When the winter came, the fig tree would shed leaves, leaving its branches bare. The olive tree saw the fig tree change and laughed. "Ha ha ha, the poor fig tree. It's a pity that you have to be in such a disgusting condition for a long time until the end of the winter. Unlike me, I have green leaves all year round." Days passed. Snow had been falling heavily, and the thick white snow had covered all the leaves and branches of the olive tree. Soon, the olive tree could not stand the heavy weight any longer, and its branches started to break off until it became a branchless tree. The fig tree said, "Although I had no leaves, and did not look beautiful like you, it kept me alive and free from harm during the winter." The moral of the story: one can survive from learning to adjust harmoniously with the environment. An ox and a goat. In a field at the end of a peaceful village, an ox was grazing in the grass when he noticed a giant lion strolling nearby. Panicked at the thought of being caught for food, the ox ran away immediately and hid in the goat pen of the village leader. The goat saw that the ox had invaded his private area, so he attacked and shouted at the ox. The ox did not make a move, as he was still scared of the lion. The ox said, "No matter how hard you try to beat me, it does not scare me at all. Wait until the lion is gone, and then we'll see which one of us is stronger." The moral of the story: a coward beats a weaker one. Frogs and the Sun. One day, the sun announced that it was going to get married. All the frogs heard that and were petrified. They all climbed out of the pond and shouted aloud in protest. The forest echoed with the shouts of the frogs. The other animals were annoyed by the frogs, and as the leader of the jungle, the lion asked the frogs, "Why do you all have to disagree with the sun's wedding? I don't think it has anything to do with any of you." An old frog replied, It has everything to do with us. Even with only one son, the water in the pond is almost dried out. If there are 2 sons, we all will die for sure. The moral of the story. Do not over-panic over things that have not yet happened. Try to solve the problem gradually. Hens and a cat. A cunning cat decided to set a trap to catch hens for food. So he found an empty sack of rice and made a hole in it. The cat hid inside the sack and waited for the hens' arrival so that he could snatch them suddenly. Soon, a few of hens came by. One of them noticed that there was a tail extruding from the sack. The hen said, "In all my years, I have seen a lot of rice sacks, so I am confident to say that good and safe one will never have the fierce claws of a cunning cat inside." When it finished speaking, the hens walked away immediately. The moral of the story. Being a careful observer can save your life. Jupiter and a Camel. Once upon a time, a camel was insulted that he was a weak and useless living thing by other animals because he lacked strength and did not have claws for self-protection like other animals. Sad, the camel approached Jupiter and said, "Why are you so biased against me? I have no sharp claws or a powerful roar like other animals. Please give me weapons and strength." Having heard the camel, Jupiter grew dissatisfied with its stupidity and said, "I have created you to be the strongest animal in the desert, but you just don't realize it." Nevertheless, the camel insisted on having strength and violent weapons. Thus, Jupiter said, "If that is your wish, I will cast a spell on your ears to make them smaller so that you can no longer hear the insults from other animals." The moral of the story. Be pleased of what you have, because you will miss it when it is gone. A donkey and its masters. A donkey working in an orchard felt that he had been working very hard, but was given only milk and corn to eat. He was very disappointed, so he went to an angel for help. The angel sent him to live with a potter. From then on, every day, its new master had him carry huge clay blocks for miles in order to make pots and other things. The donkey was fed only dry straw, grass, and water. So, the donkey went to the angel again for one last wish, another new master. This time, the angel sent him to a tanner. The donkey's new master was cruel, and the donkey had to work even harder and was whipped daily. It made the donkey realize that life at the orchard was very comfortable. At its current job, if it did not work hard to save his life now, it would be scalped and become tanned leather. The moral of the story. A person suffers most if he is not happy where he is. Travelers and the boat. A group of travelers arrived at the seaside and decided to build a raft to cross the sea. They walked up a mountain to cut down a tree. Suddenly, one of them noticed something floating in the middle of the sea and told the rest, "I think we don't have to waste our time anymore. Look at that. There's a boat coming." So, the travelers decided to wait for the boat hopefully. They waited all day long until they fell asleep. When the morning came, they walked to check at the beach. What they saw there was only a log. One of them said, "Impossible. How could it be a log?" Then another said, "If only we had built the raft yesterday, we could have sailed by now." The moral of the story: do not expect the future. Do things in the present. Two frogs and a well. Once upon a time, there were two frogs living in a shallow pond, hiding themselves from other animals. When the summer came, the well was shallow and out of water. The frogs decided to find a new place to live. Then they all went into a forest and found a very deep well. They jumped on the edge of the well and saw some water inside. The first frog said, "This well is very deep. If we move here, nobody can harm us for sure." "What you said is true," said the other frog. "However, if the well is out of water, you and I will be stuck in here for the rest of our lives. I think we'd better find a new one." The moral of the story: careful consideration lets us predict possible problems in the future. Two men and an axe. In a village, there were two men who were best friends. One day, they went into a forest together to look for firewood. When they arrived at the forest, they found an axe struck in a big tree. The first man walked straight to the axe and said, "This axe is mine because I found it." The other man said, "I also found it with you, so the axe should be mine as well." They had an argument with each other over who was to be the owner of the axe. Suddenly, an enormous man appeared and said, "That axe is mine. You two are trying to steal my axe, aren't you?" Both men were petrified. The first man said to his friend, "You are a bad man, stealing someone's axe." The other man said, "How could I think of stealing the axe? It is in your hand." The big man heard their argument and walked over to the man with the axe and beat him. The moral of the story: greed can destroy friendships and create enemies at the same time. Voles and Mongooses. Once upon a time, voles and mongooses were fighting over a plentiful paddy field. Bigger in size, The mongooses always had the advantage over the voles. However, there were plenty of voles, and they always went into hiding whenever they realized they could not win the fight, so the stalemate continued. One day, the voles met and picked a leader who was strong and brave. They hoped that this would help them win the fight. One vole was named Army Leader, and in order to strike fear into his enemies, he wore a crown made from a horn of a cow and wore steel armor. To the other voles, the leader looked rather formidable. In the next fight, the voles were again defeated by the mongooses and rushed back into their holes as usual. However, the leader vole could not run fast enough due to the weight of its armor and crown. Finally, the leader vole was surrounded by the mongooses and beaten to death. The moral of the story: a fool who is spellbound by his authority will eventually meet his doom. Worker ants and a larva. One day, a group of worker ants went out looking for food as usual. They walked in line to a big tree where they found a larva. The worker ants talked amongst themselves. "Look at that larva. It stays still all day and does nothing good to anyone." Another worker ant agreed and said, "I feel pity for that larva. It does nothing but sleep in a dry shell." All of the worker ants looked down on the larva and laughed at him. The larva did not respond and stayed quiet, so the worker ants kept looking for food. Many days later, the worker ants went out looking for food at the big tree again, and found only the dry shell of the larva. Suddenly, a beautiful butterfly flew by and said, "Hello, worker ants. I feel pity for you all. While you toil as a slave, I pleasingly sip nectar from beautiful flowers." When the butterfly finished speaking, it flew away. The moral of the story: not judge a book by its cover. A farmer and cranes. In a wheat field, cranes had eaten all the wheat, making the landowner very angry. He used a scarecrow to chase the cranes away, but they were not afraid at all. They continued eating the farmer's crops. Later, the farmer brought a bow and pretended to shoot at the cranes to scare them away. However, the cranes noticed that there was no bowstring in the farmer's hands, so they ignored him and kept eating all the wheat. This drove the farmer crazy. Picking up the bow, pulled the string back and shot the crane with an arrow. Then he began killing the cranes one by one, until one of them shouted, "Run, everyone! The farmer did not threaten us this time. He really needs to kill us all." The moral of the story: ignoring warnings brings about danger. a swallow and other birds. There was a farm where many kinds of birds had come to live, causing severe damage to the crops. One day, the farm owner sowed cotton seeds. A swallow, who had watched the farmer plant the seeds, called to its friends saying, "Hurry! Let's hurry and ruin the farmer's new crop, or they will be harvested and made into nets to catch us for sure." The other birds laughed at the silly thoughts of the swallow and ignored his cotton seeds. Time went by. The seeds grew into cotton plants. The swallow warned his friends again, saying, "We'd better find somewhere else for food. The farm owner will bring the cotton to make a net and catch us for sure." Still, none of the birds listened to him. One of them said, "Don't worry. I think the seeds are likely for cotton textiles." Finally, the owner made a net and rope from cotton to catch the birds. All of them were caught except the swallow. The moral of the story: listen to warnings from those who mean well.